listening to the title, do you think what is meant by resource and what is the connection between the resource and development? Then let's move on and dig into the details. Now, before moving into the details, let's see what we are going to learn in this lesson. In this lesson, we are going to learn what is meant by a resource and what are the different types of resources and development of resources and what is the resource planning in India. And we are going to learn about two important resources in this lesson, that is the land resource and the soil resource. In the land resource, we are going to see what is the land resource and what is the land utilization pattern in India and throughout, and what how the land why the land is degrading, what are the conservation measures to be taken. And in the soil resource, we are going to learn what are the different types of soils present and where are they present, and what is meant by the soil erosion, and what are the conservation measures for the soil. And let's move on. Now, can you identify some of the things around you which are used to satisfy your needs? For example, take in this classroom, what you can see. You can see that you are sitting on the bench that is made up of wood and iron. Where does this come from? From the trees. And you can see in your baskets there is food, and your water bottle there is water, and your bag is made up of some leather. Where are all these coming from? These are coming from the nature. So from this, what we see, whatever available in the environment around us, they are the resources and they are used to satisfy our need. So according to this, everything available in the nature, in the environment to satisfy the human needs is called a resource, which is only available to satisfy the human needs, which can satisfy the human needs is only called the resource, which is not useful to satisfy the need is not at all called a resource. For example, there is a drainage, there is water in that. Can it be used again? No. So only the resource is the thing which is available to satisfy the human needs. And not only this, there is an additional definition for the resource and resources which is available in the environment to satisfy the human need, and provided it is technologically accessible, economically feasible, and culturally acceptable can be termed as a resource. What is meant by this? Now let's move on to the first one. Technologically accessible. That means there should be technology that should be accessible to everyone, and it should be readily be available to use, and economically feasible, and we should have enough money to extract that resource and use it. And last one, culturally acceptable, that should be accepted by all the people of the society without any obligation, then only this becomes a resource. So once again, let's frame the definition of the resource: everything available in our environment that is used to satisfy the human needs, provided it is technologically accessible, economically feasible, and culturally acceptable, can be termed as a resource. This is what is meant by the resource. And let's move on. There is an interdependent relationship between the nature, technology, and institutions. What is that interdependent relationship? The process of transformation of things available in our environment involves an interactive relationship between nature, technology, and institutions. What does this mean? Suppose you take a thing in front of you. What is there in front of you? A book. And how is this book made? It is made up of paper, glue, thread. And where do we get this paper, glue, and thread? From some natural resources like wood pulp and thread from cotton or something, and everything. And how is these papers, thread, and glue made it into the book? It needs some mechanical work and technology. And this is all what is meant by the interactive relationship. How does the human beings interact with the nature? How is this relationship? We, as the human beings, interact with the nature through technology. That means we search where is the resource and how this resource is helpful, and search and may and through technology. And after that, we create institution like factories to make out the resource into a good which is useful to us, and it accelerates the economic development. That means we as the human beings are interacting with the nature through the technology and creating institutions to make the resource into an useful good which can accelerate the economic development. This is what is the interdependent relationship between the nature, technology, and institution. Do you think that the resources are free gifts of nature? No, they are not really the free gifts of nature. Resources are just the function of the human activities. Human beings are themselves a resource, and they transform the material available in the nature. What is available in the environment? They transform it into a resource. They may make it into a useful thing. They make it a resource, and human beings themselves are resources. And if these resources are used without any limit, we can't find resources in the future. And based on this, we can now see the resource classification. The resources can be classified on the basis of origin, on the basis of exhaustibility, on the basis of ownership, and on the basis of status and development. Now, the first one, on the basis of origin, the resources are divided into two types. They are the biotic resource and abiotic resource. What is meant by a biotic resource? The resources which are obtained from the biosphere and contain life are called the biotic resource. For example, trees, they give us oxygen, fishes, and flora and fauna, animals, we as human beings, they have life and they are obtained from the biosphere. These are called the biotic resource. And what is meant by a biotic resource? These are also available from the biosphere, but these do not contain any life. These are called the abiotic resource. For example, soil, rocks, metals, water, etc. And on the basis of exhaustibility, the resources are classified into two types. They are the renewable resource or the non-renewable resource. Renewable resource that get replenished, that can be replenished after they get exhausted. They are called the renewable resources like wind energy, solar energy, biomass energy, hydro energy, geothermal energy. These are called the renewable resource. Non-renewable resource, once these get exhausted, they take millions and millions of years to get replenished. We can lose them sometimes if we use them completely. These are called the non-renewable resource like petroleums, metals, natural gas, coal, etc. And on the basis of ownership, the resources are divided into individual and community, national and international. Individual, and the resources that are owned by the private individuals, only one single individual, like a car, bike, house, and you have a field and a plot of land. This is called the on the basis of ownership. The resources are classified into individual and community, and national and international. What is meant by individual resources? The resources that are owned privately by the individuals are known as the individual resources. For example, car, house, plot, or a field, etc. And if all the members of the community can have access to the resources, then that is called the community resource. For example, public parks, grazing grounds, some ponds, lakes, etc. These are called the community resources. National, it's there in the name only, that is within the country. International, that can be used by all the countries. On the basis of development, the resources are classified into potential resources, developed resources, and stock resources. What is meant by potential resource? Resources that are found in a region but have not been utilized to their full potential. That means they are in the region but we are not able to use them due to some reasons like lack of technology or lack of some equipment. That is known as the potential resource. For example, solar energy in Rajasthan and Gujarat. And second one, developed resources. The resources whose quality and quantity have been determined for the utilization through the survey, and that can be used for the for making the resource for making the good is called a developed resource. For example, Now we are using the coal for the electricity. That is the best example of the developed resource, and we are somewhere using the solar energy also. And next one is the stock resource, resources that are available in the nature but to be used, but human beings don't have the right equipment and technology to use the resources. That is called as the stock resources. There are many resources around us, but due to the lack of technology or the right equipment, we are not able to use them. For example, dams. And here we find the table of the learned things, and this is a short flow chart or a shortcut of all the things we learned till now. Let's move on to the next. Development of resources. Resources are very important for the human survival as well as for maintaining the quality of life. We thought that these resources are the free gifts of God. God gave us freely, so we started using them without any limit. So, because of the unlimited use of these resources, many problems arise. These problems, some of the few problems are depletion of the resources. That means reduction of the resources. Some resources also get exhausted, and second one is the accumulation of the resources in the hands of few people. This led to the inequality in the society, which developed the inequality and class called the rich people and the poor people. And the third one, it also affected the environment and global ecological crisis such as global warming, ozone layer depletion, environmental pollution, and land degradation. So if we use the resource in the same way, if this continues, the future planet will be in a problem. For this problem to be solved, there is a need for the equitable distribution of resources for the sustained quality of life and also for the global peace. And for this, resource planning is very important for the sustainable existence of all forms of life. That means plants, animals, human beings, all should exist like this in the future generation, also water and everything, all the resources. So this sustainable existence is a component of sustainable development. Now let's learn what is sustainable development. Sustainable economic development means development should take place without damaging the environment, and development in the present should not compromise with the needs of the future generations. That means the first thing is that we should not damage the environment, and the thing which we are doing now should not affect the future generation. That is what is the goal of the sustainable economic development. Now, let's see about Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit, which was held in the year 1992. This was the world's first international Earth Summit. It was held in Rio de Janeiro, which was in Brazil. More than 100 countries participated in this meeting. It is also known as United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. Why this meeting is held? This meeting is held for addressing the urgent problems of environmental protection and socio-economic development, not only at the national level but also at the global level. What are the outcomes? What are the last outcomes of this meeting? The last outcomes of this meeting are: the first one is the Global Forest Principles, the second one is the Agenda 21. The main aim of this meeting is to achieve the sustainable development by the 21st century. And this Agenda 21 means it is an agenda to combat the environmental damage and to combat poverty and also disease through global cooperation on the topics like mutual interest, mutual needs through the shared responsibilities. And one more main objective of Agenda 21 is that every local government also needs to adapt this Agenda 21. Now let's move on to the next topic, resource planning. This resource planning is a widely accepted strategy for the judicious use of resources. What is meant by this judicious use of resource? This means there should be some laws regarding the use of the resources. If there are no laws and regulations, then this leads to the exploitation of resources where the future planet will be in the damage. If some rules and regulations are there, then the resources can be sustainably used. And it is very important, this resource planning is very important in countries like India, where we have a wide variety of resources available in our country. And we can see that in regions like Rajasthan, we have solar energy and wind energy is not present and water is not present. Somewhere some resources are present. Some regions are abundant in some resources and some regions are deficient in some resources. If we take the example of Rajasthan, there we find the solar energy and wind energy, but we don't find the water. And if we take Arunachal Pradesh, we have a lot of water, but we don't have a proper infrastructure. And if we take Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, these are very rich areas in minerals and coal. And if but there is no proper usage and technology. So for all these, we need to proper planning. How? This calls for the balanced resource planning at the national, state, regional, and local levels. Then only all the resources which are available in the country can be properly used. That is what is the resource planning. And what is the resource planning in India? India has made many efforts for achieving the goals of resource planning right from the first 5 year plan itself after the independence. India is very rich in minerals. This attracted foreign traders into our country. And resource planning, resource conservation. What is meant by the resource conservation? This resource conservation is very important for the development, very necessary for the development. Irrational use and overconsumption of the resources may lead to the socio-economic and environmental problems because there are limited resources. If we use them, it will cause the exploitation of resources. So there is a um, common thing that is told by Gandhiji. Now let's move on to the next topic, land resource. Land is a very important natural resource. We do many wide variety of activities on land. That land is a natural resource which supports many activities like natural vegetation, wildlife, human life, economic activities, transport and communication systems and so on. And this land is an asset to us. It is very important to use the available land for various purposes with careful planning. Then only we can have this resource for the future. Now, let us see the land distribution pattern in India. The area of India is 3.287 million square kilometers. Out of the total 100% of the land, we have 43% of the land area is a plain, which provides the best facilities for the agriculture and industries. And mountains account for about 30% of the total surface area of our country, which ensure the perennial flow of the rivers. And also, they are the beautiful tourist spots. And next, remaining 27% of the area of our country is the plateau region, which is very rich in minerals, fossil fuels, and forests. Land utilization. How we utilize these lands? Land utilization, we use the land for many purposes. How we use the land? First thing, the land utilization is done in the forest. Second thing, land that is not available for cultivation, barren or wasteland, and land put to non-agricultural uses, that is, that we construct the roads, buildings, factories, etc. That is the second one. And third one, other uncultivated land. That is the excluding the fallow land, we can see that there are some permanent pastures and grazing land, and some lands have some miscellaneous trees and everything. And these trees crops are not included in the net zone area. And next one is the cultivable wasteland. This cultivable wasteland is the land which is left uncultivated more than for 5 agricultural years. Next comes the fallow land. First one is the current fallow land, that is the which is left without agriculture or cultivating for just 1 year, that is called the current fallow land. And other than current fallow land, that is the one which is left uncultivated for 1 to 5 agricultural years. And next one, net zone area, that is the land used for agriculture. So we need to follow Gandhian philosophy. What is the Gandhian philosophy? There is enough for everybody's need and not for anybody's greed. That means these resources are present to satisfy the human need, but not the greed of the human beings. And uh, when was this first resource conservation introduced? This was introduced in the year 1968 at the international level in the Club of Rome. And later, this was the Gandhian philosophy was again represented by Sochmer in his book Small is Beautiful in the year 1974. And in the year 1987, there was a global level uh, conservation measured by the Brundtland Commission report. And this report introduced the concept of sustainable development. And this also published a book called Our Common Future. And last but not the least contribution is the Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit in the Brazil in the year 1992, which was the first international Earth Summit. And the area which is sown more than once in an agricultural year plus net sown area is known as the gross crop area. That means in some areas we have plants of cultivation not only in the once in a year but more than once in a year. If we add that also, that is called the gross cropped area. Now let us see the land use pattern in India. The use of land is not only determined by the physical factors but also by the human factors. The physical factors which determine the use of land are topography, climate, soil types, and the human factors are the population density, technology, culture, and traditions. We have already learned that in India, some areas are resource. In some areas, some resources are found in abundance, but some resources are deficient. For this, we need a proper resource planning. So, this. What is meant by resource planning? Resource planning is a very complex process which involves identification and inventory of resources across different regions of the country. This means through the surveying, mapping, and quantity and quality checks and measurement of resources. This helps us to find where the resources are and how to plan the resource. And second one is evolving a planning structure endowed with appropriate technology, skill, and institutional setup for the implementing of resource development plans. That means after finding where we can find the resource, we should have a proper planning structure with proper technology and skill for the setup of the institution. And third one is the matching these resource development plan with the overall national development plans. This is what we should. This helps in the development of the country. And India has launched the resource planning scheme since the first 5-year plan also. So the availability of resource is not only the important but also how we use the resource. A proper planning of the resource is very important. That helps in the development of the country. And our country is very rich in minerals, so this resource planning is very important in our country. Conservation of resources. Resources are very important for the development activity, and the overall resources present in our countries. Conservation of resources. Resources are very important for any development activity, but irrational consumption and overutilization of these resources may lead to a socio-economic and environmental problems. To overcome these problems, resource conservation at various levels is very important. Now, let us take the resource conservation in India. The total available land in India is 3.28 million square kilometers. Out of that, the available land is 93% and remaining 7% is not used land or occupied land. Some of the land has been occupied by Pakistan and China, so this has not been surveyed. And we have some lands under the permanent pastures. And the net zone area also varies very greatly from one state to another. The net zone area is very high, up to 80% in the areas like Punjab and Haryana, and it is less than 10% in states like Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, and Manipur and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And in our country, the forest area is also less than the desired 33%, which is outlined by the National Forest Policy. Therefore, the, it was considered that essential essential this resource conservation is essential for maintenance of the ecological balance because of the livelihood of the millions of people depends upon this. The livelihoods of the millions of people who live on the fringes of these forests depend upon these forests. Because the tribal people totally depend upon these forests, we need to conserve these forests. Land degradation. What is meant by land degradation? This means the decline in the quality of land. We already learned that land is a very important natural resource, but due to the various human activities, there is a decline in the quality of the land. That human activities are deforestation, overgrazing, over irrigation, cement factories, which generates a large amount of dust, and industrial waste. This deforestation is mostly found in the states like Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, and overgrazing is found in the states of Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra. Over irrigation is found in the states like Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP. And this industrial waste and cement factories are present everywhere. And if the land usage in the same pattern continues in the same pattern, it will harm our future planet because 95% of the resources are available from the land. So there is a need to follow some conservation methods to save our planet and make the future generations safe. Some of these conservation measures are afforestation, management of grazing lands, proper irrigation, control of mining activities, treat industrial waste before the discharge. So, some mining sites have been abandoned, and if we introduce these conservation measures, we can stop the land degradation. And there are many ways to solve the problems of land degradation. And the proper management of wastelands and controlling the mining activities and waste industrial effluents and waste treatment before the treatment. This can reduce the land and water degradation in the industrial and suburban areas. So, if we do not take these conservation measures, this land resource also. Now let's move on to the next topic, soil. Soil is the most important renewable natural resource. It consists of both organic and inorganic material. It is the medium of plant growth and supports different types of living organism. And it takes millions of years to form soil up to few centimeters of depth. And the soil is divided into different layers. the top soil is it is the uppermost layer of the soil, and the next layer is the subsoil, and it consists of weathered rock, sand, and silt clay. And the next one is substratum, weathered parent rock material, and the lower is the unweathered parent bedrock. And according to the types of soil, based on the soil formation, color, thickness, texture, age, and physical and chemical properties, the soils are divided into different types. The different types of soils present in India are alluvial soils, black soils, red and yellow soils, laterite soils, arid soils, and forest soils. Moving on to the first type of soils, alluvial soils. It is the most fertile soil. It consists of sand, silt, and clay. It is spread over 40% of Indian area. It consists of PPL. What is meant by PPL? That means it consists of potash, phosphoric acid, and lime. And it it has been deposited by three important Himalayan rivers, Indus, Ganga, and Brahmaputra. And based on the age of the soil, again the alluvial soils are divided into two different types, that is the Bangar and Khadar. Bangar is the old alluvial soil, and Khadar is the new alluvial soil. And this soil is present in the northern plains and deltas of Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, and Kaveri, and in the states of Rajasthan and Gujarat. Crops grown in these areas are sugarcane, paddy, wheat, cereal crops, and pulse crops. Now, moving on to the next type of soils, the black soils. These are black in color, and so these are also known as river soils or black cotton soils. These soils are made up of extremely fine clayey materials. This soil has the best capacity to hold the moisture in it. This soil is very rich in nutrients like calcium carbonate, magnesium, potassium, and lime, but it is poor in phosphoric. And this soil is made up of lava flows. This is found in the areas of plateaus like Maharashtra, Saurashtra, Malwa, Madhya Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh, and in the valleys of Godavari and Krishna. And as the name itself suggests, it is the best suitable for growing the cotton crops. And moving on to the next type of soils, that are the red and yellow soils. The red and yellow soils are developed on the crystalline igneous rocks in the areas of low rainfall. These are generally found in the east and south parts of the Deccan Plateau, and these are found in the states of Odisha, Chhattisgarh, and southern parts of Middle Ganga Plain. These soils are red in color due to the diffusion of iron in the crystalline and metamorphic rocks, and it looks well yellow when it is converted into the hydrated form. That means when water touches this red soil, it turns into the yellow soil. Coming on to the next type of soils is the laterite soils. This word is derived from the Latin word later, which means bricks. This type of soil is found in the tropical and subtropical region, that with alternative wet and dry season. That means somewhat hot and medium hot regions. This type of soil is generally deficient in the plant nutrients because its topmost layer gets washed away every time when there is a heavy rainfall, and the phosphoric content is also very less, and there is a less amount of humus present. That means there are no nutrients in the soil, and this type of soil support some where the humus is somewhat rich. They support the deciduous and evergreen forests, and these type of soils is present in Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Odisha, Maharashtra, West Bengal, Karnataka, and Kerala. If we adopt the proper techniques, then the soil can be turned into the humus rich, and this can be used for the cultivation of crops like tea, coffee, and cashew nuts. Coming on to the next type of soils, this is the arid soils. These are red to brown in color. It has a sandy texture and saline in nature. Saline in nature means it consists of some salt. This consists of high salt content, and due to the evaporation, we can extract the salt from this soil also. And this lacks humus, and also it lacks the moisture. The lower layer of soil is occupied by the conker due to the increase in the calcium contents downwards. This type of soil is present in the hot and dry climate, like when we see. Best example is the Western Rajasthan. Next type of soil is the forest soils. These type of soils are found in the hilly and mountainous areas where there is a sufficient rainfall. Its texture, when we come to the texture, it is loamy and silty in valley sides and coarse grained in the upper slopes. That means it is in the upper slopes it's less fertile, and coming to the downside of the valley the soil is more fertile, and it is acidic in nature with low humus in the snow areas, but humus is present more in the normal areas. It is generally found in the lower parts of the valleys, and the crops grown in these forest soils are tea and coffee. Now, what is meant by soil erosion? The denudation of the soil cover and subsequent washing down of the soil is called the soil erosion. The denudation means removal of the top layer of the soil due to some reasons like soil, wind and anything natural factors is called it's called the soil erosion. And soil erosion and soil formation are the simultaneous activity. The balance is needed between these two activities. Then only the soil becomes useful as a resource. But this balance is disturbed due to the human activities like deforestation, overgrazing, construction, and also natural forces like winds, glaciers, and water. So, the types of soil erosions. When we come to the soil, different types of soil erosions. They are the gullies, sheet erosion, wind erosion. What is meant by the gullies? The running water cuts through the clayey soils and it makes the deep holes. That is called the gullies. And after that, the land becomes unfit for the cultivation, and this is known as the badland. It is found generally in the ravines of Chambal. What is meant by the sheet erosion? When the top layer of the soil is erased by the water flows, then it is called the sheet erosion. Wind erosion means the erosion of the soil, removal of the soil by the wind is called as soil, so wind erosion. So, soil conservation. What is meant by soil conservation? Soil conservation prevents the loss of topsoil from the erosion, and it maintains the fertility by addressing issues like overuse, acidification, salinization, and chemical contamination. There are some measures we need to take for the soil conservation. They are the counter ploughing, strip cropping, terrace cultivation, and shelter bed. Ploughing along the counter lines can decelerate the flow of water down the slopes. This is called as counter ploughing. And we can cultivate the crops like steps and making slopes, making terraces. This is called the terrace cultivation. This avoids the soil erosion. It is found in the western and central Himalayas. And large fields can be divided into strips. Large fields, strips of grass are left to grow between these crops. This is called as strip cropping. And planting trees in the lines to create a shelter also can work in the similar way to prevent the soil erosion. These are the different types of conservation measures to take to prevent the soil erosion. And this is the end of this lesson. Thank you. Hope you learn more from this lesson.